The throne room was collapsing. Sparks burst from shattered control panels while smoke rolled across the floor in black waves. Somewhere deep inside the Death Star, reactor alarms screamed through metal corridors as the station slowly tore itself apart. And beside the Emperor's broken throne, Darth Vader was dying. The armor that once terrified the galaxy barely functioned anymore. Burned wires hung from his chest plate. Blue lightning scars still glowed faintly across cracked black metal. Every breath sounded wet, painful, mechanical. Luke Skywalker knelt beside him, shaking. "Father," the word cut deeper than any lightsaber ever had. Not Vader. Anakin. For the first time in decades, someone still believed that name mattered. Vader slowly turned his damaged mask toward his son. Through cracked lenses, he studied Luke's face carefully. The same stubborn hope as Padmé. The same impossible belief that there was still good left inside broken people. Even after everything. The murders, the Empire, the Jedi Temple, Luke still stayed beside him. Something inside Vader collapsed completely. "Help me remove the mask." Luke hesitated only a moment before reaching for the helmet. Steam hissed as the seals released one by one. Cold air touched Anakin Skywalker's skin for the first time in decades. Real air, not filtered chemicals, not machine oxygen, just air. It burned. Of course, it burned so badly. But beneath the pain came something worse. Memory. Mustafar. Fire reflecting across black lava rivers. Obi-Wan screaming his name through smoke. Padmé crying, "You're breaking my heart." Anakin closed his eyes hard enough to hurt. No, not now. Not at the end. Luke carefully lifted away the mask completely. For the first time since becoming Darth Vader, Anakin saw his son with his own eyes. No red lenses. No darkness. Only Luke. Only light. "You were right," Anakin whispered weakly. Luke's face tightened with emotion. "You saved me." Anakin almost smiled. No, Luke saved him. Outside the massive windows, starfighters flashed through endless explosions while pieces of the station drifted into open space like burning corpses. The Death Star was dying, and so was he. Anakin felt the Force surrounding him now. Warm. Peaceful, calling him forward. For the first time in his life, he was not afraid. Then something changed. The warmth vanished instantly. The Force twisted violently around him like a wounded animal. Anakin's eyes opened. The throne room darkened. The sounds of the station became distant. Wrong. Very wrong. The Force was not pulling him forward anymore. It was dragging him backward. His body suddenly locked in place. Luke's voice echoed faintly somewhere far away. "Father." Memories exploded across Anakin's mind like blaster fire. Younglings screaming beneath red temple lights. Clone troopers marching through smoke. Padmé dying. Ahsoka leaving. Obi-Wan burning beside lava. The endless sound of mechanical breathing. His own breathing. Faster. Louder. The memories spun violently until time itself seemed to crack apart around him. Then darkness. Total darkness. No stars. No throne room. No Luke. Only breathing. Mechanical breathing echoing endlessly through the void. Anakin tried to move, but he no longer had a body. Panic finally touched him. After everything, after finally returning to the light, was this his punishment? The breathing stopped. Silence swallowed everything. Then came the scream. Not a scream. The Force itself screaming. Ancient. Agonized. As if reality had been torn open somewhere deep in the galaxy. Suddenly, light exploded across his vision. Bright sunlight. Warm air. The smell of rain and polished stone. Anakin gasped violently. Real lungs filled with air. Healthy lungs. No machinas. No burning scars. His eyes snapped open. Towering white pillars surrounded him beneath golden afternoon light. Massive trees swayed outside enormous temple windows while distant waterfalls echoed softly across the mountains. Not Coruscant. Not Tatooine. A Jedi. Temple. But impossibly ancient. Anakin staggered backward, breathing hard. His hands hit polished stone behind him. Small hands. Child hands. No gloves. No scars. No cybernetics. Fear slammed into him instantly. No, the voice that escaped his throat was young. Far too young. Several Jedi initiates nearby turned toward him in confusion. Children, laughing only moments earlier, now staring, because something about the boy suddenly felt wrong. Anakin looked down at himself. Simple training robes, small body, young skin untouched by war. But the memories remained. All of them. The Empire. Luke. Death. The horror hit harder than Mustafar ever had. Luke. Force. Luke had not been born yet. Maybe never would be. Anakin stumbled away from the others as panic consumed him completely. The room blurred. Every instinct screamed danger. Because the timeline itself had changed. Centuries too early. And somewhere far away across the temple, Master Yoda stopped walking. The old Jedi Master stood motionless beneath a quiet stone corridor while rain tapped softly against the windows nearby. His ears lowered slowly. The Force had just cried out in pain. Not fear, not anger. Pain. Deep, ancient, wounded. Yoda closed his eyes carefully. Then he felt it. A presence impossible to mistake. Not Sith, not Jedi. Something far more broken. The emotional weight hit him instantly. Fire. Death on a scale the Force itself struggled to carry. And buried beneath all of it, the shattered soul of someone who desperately wanted forgiveness. Yoda's breathing slowed, because somehow that pain belonged to a child. The old master opened his eyes toward the distant training halls. And for the first time in many years, Master Yoda felt afraid. Meanwhile, inside the initiate chambers, Anakin Skywalker stared at his reflection in polished metal. Young face, terrified eyes, but somewhere deep beneath that reflection, Darth Vader was still breathing. The throne room was collapsing. Sparks burst from shattered control panels while smoke rolled across the floor in black waves. Somewhere deep inside the Death Star, reactor alarms screamed through metal corridors as the station slowly tore itself apart. And beside the Emperor's broken throne, Darth Vader was dying. The armor that once terrified the galaxy barely functioned anymore. Burned wires hung from his chest plate. Blue lightning scars still glowed faintly across cracked black metal. Every breath sounded wet, painful, mechanical. Luke Skywalker knelt beside him, shaking. Father. The word cut deeper than any lightsaber ever had. Not Vader. Anakin. For the first time in decades, someone still believed that name mattered. Vader slowly turned his damaged mask toward his son. Through cracked lenses, he studied Luke's face carefully. The same stubborn hope as Padmé. The same impossible belief that there was still good left inside broken people. Even after everything. The murders. The Empire. The Jedi Temple. Luke still stayed beside him. Something inside Vader collapsed completely. Help me remove the mask. Luke hesitated only a moment before reaching for the helmet. Steam hissed as the seals released one by one. Cold air touched Anakin Skywalker's skin for the first time in decades. Real air, not filtered chemicals, not machine oxygen, just air. It burned, for it burned so badly. But beneath the pain came something worse. Memory. Mustafar. Fire reflecting across black lava rivers. Obi-Wan screaming his name through smoke. Padmé crying, "You're breaking my heart." Anakin closed his eyes hard enough to hurt. No, not now. Not at the end. Luke carefully lifted away the mask completely. For the first time since becoming Darth Vader, Anakin saw his son with his own eyes. No red lenses. No darkness. Only Luke. Only light. You were right, Anakin whispered weakly. Luke's face tightened with emotion. You saved me. Anakin almost smiled. No, Luke saved him. Outside the massive windows, starfighters flashed through endless explosions while pieces of the station drifted into open space like burning corpses. The Death Star was dying, and so was he. Anakin felt the Force surrounding him now. Warm, peaceful, calling him forward. For the first time in his life, he was not afraid. Then something changed. The warmth vanished instantly. The Force twisted violently around him like a wounded animal. Anakin's eyes opened. The throne room darkened. The sounds of the station became distant. Wrong. Very wrong. The Force was not pulling him forward anymore. It was dragging him backward. His body suddenly locked in place. Luke's voice echoed faintly somewhere far away. "Father!" Memories exploded across Anakin's mind like blaster fire. Younglings screaming beneath red temple lights. Clone troopers marching through smoke. Padmé dying. Ahsoka leaving. Obi-Wan burning beside lava. The endless sound of mechanical breathing. His own breathing. Faster. Louder. The memories spun violently until time itself seemed to crack apart around him. Then, darkness. Total darkness. No stars. No throne room. No Luke. Only breathing. Mechanical breathing echoing endlessly through the void. Anakin tried to move, but he no longer had a body. Panic finally touched him. After everything, after finally returning to the light, was this his punishment? The breathing stopped. Silence swallowed everything. Then came the scream. Not his scream. The Force itself screaming. Ancient. Agonized. As if reality had been torn open somewhere deep in the galaxy. Suddenly, light exploded across his vision. Bright sunlight. Warm air. The smell of rain and polished stone. Anakin gasped violently. Real lungs filled with air. Healthy lungs. No machinas. No warning scars. His eyes snapped open. Towering white pillars surrounded him beneath golden afternoon light. Massive trees swayed outside enormous temple windows while distant waterfalls echoed softly across the mountains. Not Coruscant, not Tatooine, a Jedi temple, but impossibly ancient. Anakin staggered backward, breathing hard. His hands hit polished stone behind him. Small hands. Child hands. No gloves. No scars. No cybernetics. Fear slammed into him instantly. No. The voice that escaped his throat was young. Far too young. Several Jedi initiates nearby turned toward him in confusion. Children, laughing only moments earlier, now staring, because something about the boy suddenly felt wrong. Anakin looked down at himself. Simple training robes. Small body. Young skin untouched by war. But the memories remained. All of them. The Empire. Luke. Death. The horror hit harder than Mustafar ever had. Luke. Force. Luke had not been born yet. Maybe never would be. Anakin stumbled away from the others as panic consumed him completely. The room blurred. Every instinct screamed danger. Because the timeline itself had changed. Centuries too early. And somewhere far away across the temple, Master Yoda stopped walking. The old Jedi Master stood motionless beneath a quiet stone corridor while rain tapped softly against the windows nearby. His ears lowered slowly. The Force had just cried out in pain. Not fear, not anger. Pain. Deep. Ancient. Wounded. Yoda closed his eyes carefully. Then he felt it. A presence impossible to mistake. Not Sith. Not Jedi. Something far more broken. The emotional weight hit him instantly. Fire. Death on a scale the Force itself struggled to carry. And buried beneath all of it, the shattered soul of someone who desperately wanted forgiveness. Yoda's breathing slowed, because somehow, that pain belonged to a child. The old master opened his eyes toward the distant training halls. And for the first time in many years, Master Yoda felt afraid. Meanwhile, inside the initiate chambers, Anakin Skywalker stared at his reflection in polished metal. Young face, terrified eyes, but somewhere deep beneath that reflection, Darth Vader was still breathing. Steel screamed against steel. Blue light flashed through the rain-soaked training courtyard while young Jedi swung practice sabers beneath towering stone arches. Water rolled across polished floors in silver streams as thunder echoed over the distant mountains. And in the center of the sparring ring, Anakin Skywalker stood perfectly still. Too still. The other initiates circled him carefully, wooden sabers raised, nervous eyes watching every movement he made. Because nobody liked sparring with Yoda's new Padawan anymore. Not after the accident. One boy lunged first. Anakin moved instantly. Fast. Too fast. He twisted sideways before the strike fully formed, swept the initiate's legs, and stopped his training blade less than an inch from the boy's throat. The entire exchange lasted barely 2 seconds. Silence spread through the courtyard. Rain tapped softly against stone. The fallen initiate stared upward in shock. "You moved before he attacked," another student whispered. Anakin lowered the blade slowly. Because he had. Not through the Force. Through memory. Vader spent decades surviving ambushes, assassins, and Jedi attacks. Adult instincts still lived inside his muscles, even trapped within a child's smaller body. And people were beginning to notice. Master Yoda watched from the edge of the courtyard beneath heavy rain shadows. Concern darkened his expression, not because the child was powerful, because the child fought like someone who already expected betrayal. Again, Yoda said quietly. The next initiate approached, more carefully. Anakin barely looked at him. That frightened everyone more. The second attack came low. Anakin blocked it without turning his head. Then another from behind. Blocked again. No hesitation. No fear. Only reflex. The courtyard slowly fell silent, except for rain and breathing. Even the older Padawans stopped training to watch. Because this no longer looked like natural talent. It looked like survival. Anakin finally stepped backward and lowered his saber. His chest rose unevenly. Healthy lungs. Young lungs. But every instinct inside him still waited for pain. For explosions. For blaster fire. For betrayal. The rain suddenly smelled like ash. And for one terrible second, the courtyard vanished. Temple alarms screamed through red corridors. Clone troopers fired into crowds of Jedi. Children ran through smoke. Anakin's breathing faltered violently. The memory hit too hard, too suddenly. His hand tightened around the saber, hard enough to shake. Yoda sensed the shift immediately. Enough. The command snapped through the courtyard. Training stopped, but Anakin barely heard it, because now he saw the younglings again. Tiny hands gripping him, begging him, "Master Skywalker, please." No, the word escaped him aloud. The other students backed away nervously. Rainwater dripped from Anakin's hair, while panic spread through the Force around him like cold smoke. Yoda approached carefully. "Look at me." Anakin couldn't, because the children in his memories still burned behind his eyes. "Anakin." The old master's voice softened. Not commanding, grounding. Slowly, painfully, Anakin forced himself back into the present. The courtyard returned. Zen, stone, temple bells echoing faintly through the mountains. Not the Jedi massacre. Not yet. Yoda studied him carefully. "See battlefields when you close your eyes, do you?" Anakin swallowed hard. Yes. No lies anymore. Lying to Yoda felt impossible. The old Jedi Master lowered his cane slowly. "Too young for such memories, you are." Anakin almost laughed. If only they were true. Night settled quietly over the temple. Lantern light flickered across ancient library walls while distant thunder rolled through the mountains outside. Most initiates slept by now. Anakin couldn't. Sleep meant dreams. Dreams meant Mustafar. He moved silently between towering archive shelves while rain shadows shifted across the floor around him. Ancient Jedi texts rested open across a nearby table. Galactic conflicts, political collapses, Sith uprisings, patterns. Anakin searched for patterns constantly now, because history felt unstable, wrong. Small things had already changed. Names were missing from records he remembered. Battles happened differently. People survived who should have died. Every change created new fractures, and the fractures were spreading. You search for the future. Anakin froze instantly. Yoda stood near the library entrance beneath dim golden light. Watching him, the old master stepped closer slowly. "Cannot sleep?" Anakin looked back toward the open holobooks. "I keep trying to stop things before they happen." "Control the future, you cannot." The answer came gently. That almost made it worse. Anakin's jaw tightened. "You don't understand." Yoda's expression saddened slightly. "No," he admitted softly. "Understand, I do not." The honesty caught Anakin off guard. Palpatine always pretended to understand everything. The Jedi often pretended too. But Yoda simply admitted the truth. And somehow, that hurt more. Anakin looked down at his small hands resting against the archive table. I already watched everyone die once. Silence filled the library. Rain whispered against the windows. Yoda slowly sat across from him. Tell me, the old master said quietly, why fight so hard to save a future that wounded you so deeply? The question hit like a blade, because Anakin didn't know anymore. Was he saving the galaxy? Or just trying to undo his own guilt? His breathing slowed unevenly. There was still good in it, he whispered. Luke, the thought alone nearly broke him. Yoda sensed the grief immediately. Not ordinary grief. The grief of losing someone time itself had erased. Someone important, Yoda said softly. Anakin closed his eyes. My son. The words barely escaped his throat. The library suddenly felt colder. Yoda remained completely still, because once again, the child spoke like a man who had already lived an entire lifetime. 3 days later, the first disaster happened. Temple warning sirens echoed through the mountain corridors while Jedi rushed toward the Eastern meditation bridges overlooking the cliffs. A transport shuttle had lost stabilizers during the storm. Younglings were trapped inside. Anakin heard the alarms from halfway across the temple. And instantly, memory struck him. Fire, falling metal, screaming children. No, not again. He ran. The rain outside hit like freezing needles as he sprinted across the open bridge platforms. Wind howled through the mountain towers while Jedi struggled to hold the damaged shuttle steady with the Force. The ship tilted violently over the cliffs. One engine exploded. Several younglings screamed inside. Anakin stopped dead because he remembered this. Not from history, from another memory. A shuttle crash during the Clone Wars. Different place. Same fear. And he remembered exactly what came next. The second engine would rupture. The right support beam would collapse. Everyone inside would die. No! Anakin shouted. The Jedi nearby turned in shock. But Anakin was already moving. He reached through the Force instinctively. Not calmly. Not like a Jedi. Like Vader. Power surged violently through the storm around him. The damaged shuttle groaned as invisible pressure slammed against its collapsing frame. Several Jedi stared in disbelief, because the child was using far too much power, too aggressively. The second engine exploded exactly as Anakin remembered. The support beam snapped, but this time, the shuttle stopped falling. Rain whipped around Anakin violently while his small body trembled under the strain. The ship hovered inches above the cliffs. Alive, the youngling survived. For one brief moment, hope touched him. Then reality changed. A support cable nearby suddenly snapped loose from the overloaded platform. One Jedi Master never saw it coming. The metal line whipped across the bridge with horrifying speed and cut directly through his chest. Blood sprayed across the rain. Silence. The shuttle survived. The Master collapsed dead beside it. Anakin stopped breathing. No, that wasn't supposed to happen. The timeline had changed again. Worse. Jedi rushed toward the fallen Master while thunder shook the mountains overhead. But Anakin couldn't move, because he finally understood the truth. Saving people no longer restored the future. It mutated it. Every change created something new, something unpredictable, something dangerous. Yoda appeared beside him silently while rain poured across the shattered bridge. Anakin's eyes remained locked on the dead Jedi. I saved them, he whispered weakly. Yes, but he still died. The words sounded small, broken. Yoda watched the storm carefully before answering. Save everyone no one can. Anakin's face hardened slowly, because he remembered another old lesson. One Palpatine once taught him, power exists to prevent loss. And suddenly, for the first time since returning to the past, Anakin understood how Darth Vader could be born again. Not through hatred, through desperation. Then far away beneath the hidden ruins of an ancient Sith world, a hooded figure suddenly awoke from meditation. The dark side churned violently around the chamber. Ancient statues cracked, candles extinguished themselves, and deep inside the shadows, the Sith prophet slowly opened his eyes. Fear entered his voice immediately, because across the Force, he He had just felt something impossible. Not the return of Darth Vader. The return of his grief. The candles went out first, one by one, without wind, without sound. Deep beneath the surface of Moraband, the ancient Sith shrine fell into darkness while hooded figures slowly raised their heads toward the stone ceiling above them. Silence swallowed the chamber. Then came the breathing, mechanical, heavy, ancient. The sound echoed through the underground temple like a dying machine crawling through smoke. Several cultists collapsed immediately. One began screaming prayers beneath his hood. Another clawed at his own face in panic, because the dark side itself had just changed. The oldest prophet in the chamber slowly opened his eyes. Blind white pupils stared into darkness. And for the first time in over 40 years, fear touched him. "He returns," the prophet whispered. The breathing stopped instantly, but the feeling remained. Cold, burning, hungry. The ancient Sith statue surrounding the chamber suddenly cracked down the middle as invisible pressure spread through the shrine like a wound tearing open. The future was moving backward. Rain hammered against the windows of the High Republic Temple. Anakin Skywalker stood alone inside a narrow meditation chamber overlooking endless mountain cliffs. Lightning flashed across distant storm clouds while cold blue light rolled across the polished floor around him. He had not slept. Again, the dead Jedi Master from the bridge accident still haunted him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the moment differently. Different outcomes, different deaths, different futures branching apart endlessly. In one vision, the younglings died. In another, Yoda died trying to save them. In another, Anakin saw himself wearing black armor again. The timeline was mutating faster now, and he could feel it physically. Like the Force itself no longer trusted reality. Anakin pressed trembling hands against the meditation platform. Healthy hands, small hands, but sometimes they felt mechanical. Sometimes he swore he could still hear servos moving beneath his skin. A soft knock interrupted the silence. Yoda entered slowly beneath flickering lantern light. The old master studied the child carefully. Again, dreaming of death? Anakin looked toward the rain-covered mountains. Not dreams. That answer worried Yoda more every time. The old master stepped beside him quietly. The force around the boy felt unstable tonight. Not darker, fractured, like several versions of the same soul were trying to exist at once. "Fear grows inside you," Yoda said softly. Anakin almost laughed. Fear never left him. Fear built Darth Vader. Fear destroyed the Jedi. Fear killed Padmé. And now fear was returning. Because the future was becoming unreadable. "I changed too much already," Anakin whispered. Lightning illuminated the room in sharp, white flashes. Yoda's ears lowered slightly. "Save lives, you did. And someone else died instead." The words came harder this time. Angrier. Anakin turned away sharply. "You don't understand what happens when destiny breaks." The air inside the chamber suddenly felt colder. Because for one terrible second, the child's voice sounded exactly like Vader's. Deep. Mechanical. Old. Yoda sensed it instantly. So did Anakin. His eyes widened in horror. No. The voice vanished immediately. But the damage remained. Yoda watched him carefully now. Not with fear. With sadness. Because the old Jedi Master finally understood something. Dangerous. The boy was not simply remembering Darth Vader. He was fighting not to become him again. Far across the galaxy, the Sith prophet began bleeding from his eyes. The visions had become stronger. Too strong. The underground shrine trembled violently, while dark side symbols burned across the stone walls in glowing red patterns. The hooded cultists surrounded the prophet silently, waiting, terrified. The old man's body shook as another vision slammed into him. Fire. A black figure standing over thousands of dead Jedi. A galaxy chained beneath Imperial banners. A machine breathing inside endless darkness. Then a child. Small. Alone. Standing beside Master Yoda beneath mountain rain. The prophet gasped violently. Impossible. One cultist stepped forward carefully. "What did you see?" The prophet slowly lifted trembling hands toward the shadows. The destroyer. The room went still. Every Sith cult on Moraband knew the ancient prophecy. The destroyer, a being born from the Force itself. One who would either erase the Sith forever or become their final god. The prophet's voice cracked. He wears the face of a child. Temple training intensified over the following weeks. Yoda pushed Anakin harder than the other initiates now. Longer meditation sessions. Combatrir. Force control exercises. At first, the masters believed Yoda was testing him. The truth was worse. Yoda was measuring damage, because the force around the child continued shifting unpredictably. Some days, Anakin felt calm. Other days, entire rooms grew cold when he entered. The younger Padawans avoided him now, not because he was cruel, because he looked haunted, and haunted things frighten children. Inside one training chamber, floating stones circled slowly through the air, while Anakin sat motionless beneath dim lantern light. Control. Focus. Breathing. Yoda watched carefully from nearby shadows. Release fear, the old master instructed softly. Anakin's eyes remained closed. I can't. What? The answer came instantly. Because fear keeps people alive. The floating stones dropped suddenly. Several shattered against the floor. Yoda's expression darkened. That was not a Jedi answer. That was survival speaking, and survival sounded too much like Vader. That night, the first Sith assassin arrived. Temple guards found the body hanging upside down outside the western cliff walls. No leaks of wounds. No signs of battle. Only terror frozen across the dead man's face. Anakin felt the disturbance before the alarm sounded. He woke instantly, heart racing. The dark side had entered the temple. The realization hit him harder than expected, because he recognized the feeling immediately. Not Sidious. Older, more primitive. Ancient Sith hatred. Rain crashed against the temple towers while Jedi rushed through the corridors around him. Emergency lanterns painted the stone hallways red as voices echoed through the storm. Anakin stepped into the chaos carefully, and suddenly froze. A body lay covered near the western entrance. One glimpse was enough. His blood turned cold. The assassin's armor matched ancient Sith cult markings Vader once saw inside Palpatine's private archives. Impossible. Those cults were supposed to appear centuries later. The timeline was accelerating. Again, Yoda approached beside him silently. You know this symbol. Not a question. Anakin stared at the body. Yes. Ow. Anakin hesitated too long. Yoda noticed immediately. So did several nearby Jedi Masters. Fear spread quietly through the corridor. Because the child recognized Sith markings no Jedi should know existed. Anakin finally looked away. They followed Vader. Silence. The storm outside seemed quieter suddenly. One master stepped forward sharply. Who is Vader? The name itself poisoned the air. Anakin's breathing slowed unevenly, because the dark side reacted violently every time he spoke it aloud. Like the galaxy remembered. Like destiny listened. He's what happens when fear finally wins, Anakin whispered. Several Jedi exchanged uneasy glances. Yoda remained motionless, watching, listening. And somewhere deep inside the Force, the old master sensed another truth forming. The child was no longer merely changing the timeline. The timeline was beginning to change him back. Deep beneath Moraband, the prophet collapsed to his knees. Blood ran freely from his nose now, while terrified cultists backed away from him. The visions would not stop. 1,000 futures crashing together. Jedi temples burning. Sith empires rising too early. A child standing at the center of it all, while reality twisted around him like broken glass. The prophet finally screamed. He remembers us. The chamber shook violently. Ancient statues exploded apart. And somewhere far away across the stars, Anakin Skywalker suddenly dropped to one knee inside the temple corridor. Pain exploded through his skull. The dark side was searching for him now, not hunting, remembering. Fragments of Vader's old life slammed through him again. Palpatine's voice. Mustafar fire. The endless sound of breathing inside black armor. Then, another vision appeared, one he had never seen before. A throne, ancient, black stone carved with Sith symbols. And seated upon it was himself. Not Anakin, not Vader, something worse, older. A version of Darth Vader crowned like a king, while entire galaxies burned beneath him. Anakin gasped sharply, and the vision shattered. Temple lanterns flickered around him. Jedi rushed toward him in alarm. But Anakin barely heard them, because for the first time since returning to the past, he realized something truly horrifying. The future was no longer repeating itself. It was evolving, and somewhere inside the dark side, something ancient had just mistaken Darth Vader for a prophecy. The meditation chamber was built beneath the mountain itself. Cold stone walls curve around a massive circular floor covered in ancient Jedi symbols worn smooth by centuries of use. Thin streams of water trickled through narrow cracks in the ceiling, while hundreds of candles flickered softly in the darkness. No windows, no wind, only silence and breathing. Anakin stood alone at the center of the chamber beneath pale candlelight, while 12 Jedi Masters formed a wide circle around him, watching, studying, judging. He hated rooms like this. Too quiet, too controlled. Palpatine once loved rooms like this. Places where people smiled calmly while deciding your future without asking what it might cost you. The thought poisoned his stomach instantly. Yoda noticed. The old master leaned slightly against his cane beside the entrance while concern shadowed his expression. "Relax," Yoda said softly. Anakin almost laughed. "Relax," as if he was not standing inside a room full of Jedi, trying to decide whether he was dangerous enough to destroy. A younger Jedi Master stepped forward slowly. Tall, sharp-eyed, still years away from the legendary General Obi-Wan Kenobi history would remember. But Anakin recognized him immediately. Obi-Wan. The sight nearly hurt. For one brief second, memories collided violently inside him. Rain on Kamino. Battles across the Clone Wars. Laughing inside starfighters. You were my brother. Anakin, the grief hit so suddenly Anakin had to look away. Obi-Wan noticed immediately. The child looked terrified just from seeing him. That disturbed him more than he expected. Master Yoda, Obi-Wan said quietly. Are we certain this is wise? Yoda's ears lowered slightly. No longer certain of anything, I am. The chamber darkened subtly as the ritual candles flickered lower. One older master activated the ancient force circle carved into the floor. Blue light spread outward beneath Anakin's feet like cracks through ice. The ritual had one purpose: to reveal truth hidden inside the Force. Anakin's pulse spiked instantly. No. They cannot see inside his memories. Not those memories. Not the temple. Not Padmé. Not Vader. He stepped backward instinctively. Wait. Several masters stiffened. Fear spread through the room immediately, because the child suddenly sounded genuinely terrified. Obi-Wan frowned carefully. Where are you hiding? The question landed like a blade. Anakin opened his mouth, then stopped. How could he explain this? How could anyone? He looked toward Yoda desperately. For a second, the old master almost stopped the ritual. Almost. But then the chamber lights dimmed further. The Force itself had already begun moving. Too late now. Blue energy rose slowly around Anakin's body. Cold, heavy, ancient. The moment it touched him, the visions exploded outward violently. Fire consumed the Jedi Temple. Not metaphorical fire. Real fire. Walls collapsing. Smoke swallowing corridors. Screaming everywhere. The Masters staggered backward as the visions swallowed the chamber completely. Now they stood inside the future. Inside hell. Clone troopers marched through smoke-filled hallways firing into crowds of Jedi Knights. Red blaster bolts illuminated dead children across shattered floors. Obi-Wan froze instantly. No, a terrified Padawan reached toward him through smoke, then vanished beneath blaster fire. The vision shifted violently again. A black figure emerged from the flames. Tall, mechanical, breathing. The sound alone poisoned the room with fear. Several masters physically recoiled. because even through the vision, they could feel him. Darth Vader. Power rolled off the figure like a storm. Not rage, not simple evil. Pain, endless pain. The black armored giant slowly ignited a red lightsaber, and the slaughter began. One Jedi Master inside the ritual gasped sharply as Vader cut through 3 Jedi at once without slowing down. Another vision flashed. Burning worlds beneath Imperial fleets. Planets bombarded from orbit. Stormtroopers marching across cities covered in ash. The galaxy chained beneath black banners. Obi-Wan staggered backward, because suddenly the vision shifted again. Now he stood alone beside a river of lava beneath black, volcanic skies. Mustafar, and kneeling in the ash before him, was Anakin Skywalker. Older, burning, destroyed. "You were my brother, Anakin." The words escaped Obi-Wan before he realized it. The vision Anakin looked upward slowly, yellow Sith eyes burning through tears. "I hate you." The chamber shook violently. Several masters broke concentration immediately, but the Force refused to release them. More visions came. Faster now. Padmé dying in darkness. Luke screaming beside the Emperor's throne. Darth Vader kneeling before Sidious. Children hiding inside temple classrooms while mechanical breathing echoed closer. And beneath all of it, Anakin Skywalker screaming, not in anger, in grief. The entire chamber suddenly snapped back into reality. Candles exploded outward. Several masters collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. The ritual ended, but the silence afterward felt worse than the visions. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Anakin stood, trembling at the center of the chamber, while tears rolled silently down his face. Because they had seen everything. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to fear him forever. The first person to step away from him was Obi-Wan. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just instinctively. And somehow, that hurt more. The younger Jedi Master stared at Anakin like he no longer recognized what stood before him. Because part of him still felt the emotional horror inside those visions. Not merely destruction. Familiarity. The child had not watched Darth Vader. The child had been him. One master finally broke the silence. That creature destroys the Jedi Order. Another stepped backward nervously. The dark side surrounds a boy. No, yo don't interrupt sharply. But uncertainty already spread through the room. Fear moved faster than reason. Anakin saw it happening in real time. The glances, the distance, the way hands subtly moved closer to lightsabers. Exactly like before. Exactly like the Jedi always did when fear touched them. His chest tightened painfully, because suddenly he understood something horrible. No matter how hard he fought to change, the Jedi would always see Vader first. Obi-Wan stepped forward slowly. The younger Jedi's face looked pale beneath candlelight. "Those visions," he said carefully. "Were they real?" Anakin could barely breathe. He looked toward Obi-Wan and saw another memory crash into him instantly. Mustafar fire reflecting in tears. "You were my brother." The pain nearly broke him. "Yes," Anakin whispered. The chamber went cold. Several masters exchanged alarmed looks immediately. Because the answer came too fast. Too honestly. Obi-Wan's voice lowered. "You're saying those events happen in the future?" "They did. Did, not might. Not could. Did." The certainty inside that single word frightened the room more than the visions themselves. One older master stepped toward Yoda angrily. "You knew the danger." "No, Yoda answered quietly. "Know the pain I did. That thing becomes a monster." Anakin flinched like he had been struck. Thing, not child, not Padawan. Thing. The old fear returned instantly. Isolation, suspicion, judgment. His breathing quickened unevenly. Mechanical breathing. For one horrifying second, the sound echoed through the chamber again. Several masters heard it, and panic spread immediately. He's losing control. Hands reached for lightsabers. The movement shattered something inside Anakin completely. "No," he whispered weakly. But now the room already looked at him the same way the galaxy once looked at Darth Vader. Like a disaster waiting to happen. The force around him twisted violently. Candles extinguished. Stone cracked beneath his feet. Fear exploded through the chamber. Obi-Wan instinctively stepped between Anakin and the other masters. Not to protect him, to contain him. Anakin saw it instantly, and the realization wounded him deeper than Mustafar ever had. Even Obi-Wan feared him now. Enough! Yoda's voice struck through the chamber like thunder. The force stabilized instantly. Silence returned. The old master slowly stepped toward Anakin, while the other Jedi remained tense around the edges of the room. Yoda looked directly into the child's terrified eyes, and saw something the others missed. Not hunger for power, not Sith ambition, only exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone desperately trying not to become the worst version of himself again. Afraid, all of you are, Yoda said quietly without turning around. One master answered immediately. We should be. The old Jedi Master closed his eyes briefly, because that was the exact sentence that once destroyed Anakin Skywalker. Fear leads to control. Control leads to isolation. Isolation creates monsters. The cycle was beginning again, centuries too early. Yoda opened his eyes slowly, and for the first time in many years, the ancient Jedi Master felt uncertain about the Order itself. Later that night, Anakin sat alone outside the temple overlooking endless black mountains beneath storm clouds. Rain soaked through his robes. He didn't care. The cold helped him stay present. Inside the temple behind him, whispers moved through the halls already. Dangerous child. Dark side corruption. Future destroyer. The Jedi were afraid. Again, Anakin stared into the rain while distant thunder rolled across the cliffs. Maybe they were right. Maybe Darth Vader never truly died aboard the Death Star. Maybe he simply found a younger body. Footsteps approached quietly behind him. Obi-Wan. Anakin recognized the rhythm instantly. The younger Jedi stopped several feet away beneath the rain. Not close enough to comfort him. Not far enough to leave. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Obi-Wan finally asked the question quietly. In those visions, did I fail you? Anakin's eyes closed immediately. Force that hurt, because even now, Obi-Wan still blamed himself first. The rain grew heavier around them. Anakin swallowed hard. You tried to save me. The words barely escaped his throat. Obi-Wan looked toward the mountains silently. And did I? Anakin could not answer, because somewhere deep inside himself, he still didn't know. The rain never stopped anymore. For 7 straight days, storms surrounded the mountain temple without rest. Thunder rolled endlessly across the cliffs while gray clouds swallowed the sky from morning until night. The Jedi whispered about it constantly. Some called it coincidence. Others blamed the strange child Yoda had chosen. Anakin heard every rumor. The cursed Padawan, the future Sith, the boy who carried death inside the Force. None of it surprised him anymore. Fear always needed a face, and Darth Vader had spent most of his life becoming one. Anakin stood alone beside the upper temple balcony, watching lightning split the distant mountains apart. Cold rain soaked through his robes while wind pulled at his hair violently. Healthy body, young body, but his exhaustion felt ancient now. The Order feared him. The Sith searched for him, and the timeline itself no longer made sense. Below the balcony, temple guards moved through the lower courtyards, carrying additional weapons crates into the main halls. That made Anakin's stomach tighten immediately. Weapons. Inside the Jedi Temple. Another memory surfaced instantly. Clone troopers stacking rifles before the massacre. Preparation always came before betrayal. A soft voice interrupted the storm behind him. You think we are becoming weak? Anakin turned slowly. Yoda stood in the doorway, beneath warm lantern light, leaning quietly against his cane while rain shadows moved across his face. Anakin looked back toward the armed guards below. I think you're becoming afraid. The honesty settled heavily between them. Yoda did not deny it, because fear already poisoned the temple corridors. Masters argued constantly now. Some wanted Anakin isolated. Others wanted him studied. One had quietly suggested execution 2 nights earlier. The old Jedi Master felt every fracture spreading through the Order. And worse, he understood why. The visions were real. The deaths were real. Somewhere in the future, Darth Vader truly destroyed the Jedi. That truth changed everything. Yoda stepped beside Anakin beneath the rain. "Tell them," the old master said softly. Anakin froze. "No, necessary it has become." The child's breathing slowed unevenly, because he already knew what would happen. The moment the Jedi learned how the Order died, they would stop trusting each other. Exactly like before. "That knowledge destroys people," Anakin whispered. Yoda looked out toward the storm-covered mountains. "Already destroying us, silence is." The council chamber felt colder than usual. Ancient stone pillars rose into darkness, while massive windows overlooked endless rain and lightning outside the mountain temple. The circular chamber glowed faintly beneath blue holographic light. Every seat was occupied, every face tense. Obi-Wan stood near the outer wall in complete silence, arms folded tightly beneath his robes. Since the vision ritual, he barely looked at Anakin directly anymore. That hurt more than anger ever could. Anakin entered beside Yoda slowly. The moment he stepped into the chamber, conversation stopped. Every eye turned toward him, judging, measuring, fearing. It felt exactly like standing before the Jedi Council during the Clone Wars again. The same cold distance, the same suspicion. Only this time, they had reason. One older master finally spoke. "Master Yoda claims the boy knows how the Jedi Order falls. Not boy, not Padawan, the boy. A problem." Anakin remained standing at the center of the chamber while rain rolled endlessly down the giant windows behind him. Yoda's voice stayed calm. "Truth he carries." Another master leaned forward sharply. "Or manipulation." The accusation poisoned the room instantly. Anakin felt anger rise inside him. Quick, huh? Dangerous. The dark side stirred beneath his ribs like an old instinct waking up. He forced it down immediately. Not again. Never again. Mace-like voices echoed across the chamber. If these visions are genuine, then the Order faces extinction. And if the child caused the future himself, that possibility cannot be ignored. Obi-Wan finally spoke quietly from the shadows. He believes the future can be changed. Several masters turned toward him. One frowned carefully. "And do you?" Obi-Wan hesitated. That hesitation wounded Anakin deeply. Because once, Obi-Wan would have answered without doubt. Now fear stood between them. The younger Jedi looked toward Anakin slowly. "I believe he's terrified." The room fell silent. Anakin lowered his eyes. Because that part was true. Yoda stepped forward carefully. "Reveal the truth," the old master said softly. Anakin's heartbeat slowed. No turning back now. The rain outside intensified violently, thunder shaking the chamber walls while candlelight flickered across uneasy faces. Anakin looked around the council slowly, then finally spoke. "The Jedi Order dies because the Republic turns against it." Several masters stiffened instantly. "The Senate?" one asked sharply. "No," Anakin's voice hardened. "The soldiers." Confusion spread across the chamber. Anakin swallowed hard, because now came the impossible part. "The Republic creates an army," he continued quietly. "An army bred for obedience from birth. They fight beside the Jedi during a galactic war." One master frowned. "A clone army?" Anakin looked at him immediately. "Yes." Murmurs spread around the chamber. The Republic had debated military expansion for decades, but the idea remained controversial. Anakin's next words shattered the room completely. "The clones are programmed to betray you." Silence. Pure silence. Rain hammered the temple windows harder. Several masters exchanged alarmed looks immediately. Obi-Wan stepped forward slowly. "What do you mean programmed?" Anakin's jaw tightened, because he remembered their faces. The clones. Men who laughed with him, fought beside him, died beside him, then turned. "An order exists inside them," Anakin whispered. "A hidden command buried deep in their minds. When activated, they execute every Jedi in the galaxy." One master rose instantly. "That's impossible." "No, Anakin answered. I watched it happen." The words echoed through the chamber like a funeral bell. Some masters looked horrified. Others looked suspicious. One looked terrified enough to reach for his lightsaber instinctively. Anakin noticed immediately. Fear. Again. Always fear. Another master spoke sharply. Who gives this order? Anakin's eyes slowly lifted toward the center of the chamber, and suddenly the temperature inside the room felt colder. The Sith. Several voices erupted at once. The Sith are extinct. No, Anakin interactive. The force behind the word silenced the chamber instantly. He stepped forward slightly. They hide inside the Republic itself. Patient. Invisible. Waiting for the war to weaken the Jedi first. Obi-Wan's face darkened carefully. You know this Sith Lord personally. Not a question. Anakin looked at him. Pain crossed his face instantly. Yes. Obi-Wan swallowed slowly. And who is he? The room held its breath. Anakin's hands trembled slightly. Because even now, speaking Palpatine's name felt dangerous. Like summoning a ghost. He becomes Chancellor of the Republic, Anakin whispered. The chamber exploded into chaos. Impossible. Madness. Accusations crashed across the room, while thunder shook the mountains outside. Some masters demanded proof immediately. Others argued the child had corrupted himself with Sith visions. One master pointed directly at Anakin. This knowledge itself is poisoning the Order. Another answered instantly. He may be trying to manipulate us into militarizing the Republic. Exactly like before. Fear creating division. Anakin watched it happen in real time. And suddenly, he felt tired beyond words. Because this was how the Jedi always died. Not from weakness. From fear pretending to be wisdom. Then Obi-Wan asked the question that shattered him completely. How much of his future happened because of you? Silence crashed through the chamber instantly. Anakin stopped breathing. The pain behind the question hurt worse, because Obi-Wan sounded afraid to know the answer. Anakin looked toward him slowly, and for one brief moment, he saw Mustafar again. You were my brother. The memory nearly broke him. I helped destroy everything, Anakin admitted quietly. No defense, no excuses, just truth. The room went deathly silent. Several masters looked horrified now, not because they doubted him, because they finally believed him. Anakin felt it instantly. The shift, the fear changing shape around him. He was no longer merely dangerous. He was evidence, living proof that Darth Vader existed somewhere in the future. One master finally spoke the thought haunting all of them. If the boy becomes this monster, another finished it quietly. Then perhaps the safest future is one where he never survives long enough to become him. The chamber froze. Obi-Wan's eyes widened slightly. Even Yoda looked shaken. But the thought had already entered the room. And once fear speaks aloud, it never truly leaves. Anakin stared at the masters surrounding him. The same order he once betrayed. The same order he came back to save. And suddenly, they looked exactly like they did before the Empire rose. Paranoid, suspicious, afraid of losing control. The cycle had already begun again. Anakin turned away from the council slowly. Rainlight reflected across his face while thunder rolled outside the giant chamber windows. I told you because I thought it would save you, he whispered. No one answered, because nobody knew anymore whether the truth itself was making things worse. Anakin looked toward Yoda one final time, and the old master felt cold, because for the first time since meeting the child, he sensed something changing inside him again. Not anger, not hatred, disappointment, the kind that slowly turns hope into isolation. Anakin stepped toward the chamber exit, then stopped. Without turning around, he spoke one final sentence. The Jedi didn't fall because they were weak, he said quietly. The rain outside intensified violently. They fell because they became afraid of the wrong people. Then he walked into the storm-dark corridor beyond the chamber doors. And behind him, the Jedi Council immediately began arguing about whether Darth Vader should be imprisoned before destiny caught up to him. The screaming woke him first. Not real screaming, memory screaming, clone troopers firing through temple halls, younglings crying, lightsabers igniting inside smoke. Anakin Skywalker opened his eyes violently. Darkness surrounded him. Cold sweat covered his body while rain hammered against the narrow windows of his temple chamber. Thunder rolled through the mountains outside like distant artillery fire. For one terrible second, he forgot where he was. Not the High Republic, not Yoda's temple. Only war, only death. Then came the breathing. Mechanical, slow, directly behind him. Anakin froze instantly. No, the sound deepened. Metallic lungs dragging air through ruined machinery. The sound he heard every day for over 20 years. His own breathing. Anakin spun around violently. Nothing. Only darkness and flickering lantern light. The breathing stopped immediately, but panic remained. His hands trembled hard enough to hurt. Because this time, the sound had felt real. The Jedi Temple no longer slept peacefully. Armed guards now stood outside major archive halls. Temple patrols doubled overnight. Several masters quietly moved younglings into protected lower chambers beneath the mountain. Fear changed architecture quickly, and Anakin recognized every part of it. The Republic once did the same thing before the Empire rose. More soldiers, more security, more suspicion. People always called it protection right before everything collapsed. Rain rolled endlessly down the giant temple windows while whispers spread through every corridor the moment Anakin appeared. Some Padawans moved away immediately. Others stared openly. One child looked terrified enough to hide behind his instructor. Anakin pretended not to notice. But every reaction cut deeper now, because they were beginning to look at him the same way the galaxy once looked at Darth Vader. Not as a person, as a warning. The council fractured publicly 3 days later. Voices echoed violently through the upper chambers while thunder shook the mountain temple outside. Emergency meetings had become constant since Anakin exposed the truth about Order 66. And now the arguments were getting worse. He cannot remain free. The sentence landed like a blade across the chamber. Anakin stood motionless near the far wall, while several masters argued around the circular table beneath flickering blue lights. One older master pointed directly toward him. The child carries knowledge capable of destroying the Republic itself. And imprisoning him solves what exactly? Obi-Wan asked sharply. The room turned toward him immediately. Since the ritual visions, Obi-Wan looked exhausted constantly. Sleepless. Haunted. Because he remembered Mustafar now too. Not fully, not clearly, but fragments remained inside him like broken glass. Fire, a lava river, Anakin screaming. The younger Jedi still did not understand how those memories existed, only that they hurt. One master answered Obi-Wan coldly. If the future truly depends on him becoming Vader, then stopping him early may save billions. The room fell silent. Anakin lowered his eyes slowly. There it was. The thought everyone carried, but feared speaking aloud. Kill the child before the monster is born. Yoda's cane struck the floor sharply. Dangerous, this path is. Another master stepped forward immediately. Dangerous? Master Yoda. The Force itself breaks around him. Thunder exploded outside. The chamber lights flickered, and for one horrifying second, Anakin heard the breathing again. Closer this time. Mechanical. Angry. He pressed trembling fingers against the edge of the stone wall beside him. No one else reacted. No one else heard it. The realization terrified him. That night, the timeline changed again. Anakin felt it happen physically, like reality tearing open somewhere far away. He collapsed instantly inside the temple archives while ancient holobooks crashed from shelves around him. Pain exploded through his skull. Visions slammed into him one after another. Not memories. New futures. Changing futures. A Republic fleet burning above Coruscant centuries too early. Sith banners rising across worlds that were never supposed to fall. A younger version of Obi-Wan dying in battle. Padmé vanishing completely. Not dead. Erased. Anakin gasped violently. The future was disappearing. His memories no longer matched reality consistently. Some names vanished entirely. Some wars happened differently. And some people simply stopped existing. The archives around him flickered strangely. One ancient holomap changed shape in real time before his eyes. Entire star systems shifted. The timeline was collapsing. Anakin. Yoda's voice reached him through the chaos. The old master rushed toward him while several holobooks floated wildly through the chamber around them. Anakin grabbed the edge of a stone table desperately. "It's breaking," he whispered. Yoda steadied him carefully. "What? Breaking?" "The future." The answer barely sounded human. Another vision struck immediately. This time, Luke Skywalker vanished. Not dying, never existing. Anakin screamed. The sound echoed violently through the archive chamber while every floating object crashed to the floor at once. Yoda felt the grief hit the Force instantly. Not ordinary grief. The grief of losing someone reality itself had erased. The old master's expression darkened. "Who did you lose?" Anakin looked up slowly, and Yoda felt cold, because the child's eyes looked older than ever before. "My son." Meanwhile, far beyond Republic space, the Sith gathered openly for the first time in centuries. The underground temple of Moraband shook violently beneath endless storms while hooded cultists surrounded the ancient throne chamber in silence. The prophet stood before them, bleeding from both eyes. Terrified. "Speak," one cult leader demanded. The old prophet trembled visibly. The timeline mutates around the destroyer. Fear spread through the chamber. Several cultists lowered their heads immediately, because the visions were becoming impossible to ignore now. Every Sith oracle across the Outer Rim saw the same thing. Darth Vader standing at the center of reality itself, while history twisted around him like burning paper. One cultist whispered carefully, "Is he our salvation?" The prophet looked horrified. "No." Lightning cracked across the stone ceiling above them. "He is the Wound." Inside the Jedi Temple, fear became policy. Younglings forbidden from approaching Anakin. Additional guards outside his chamber. Restricted access to archives. Quiet surveillance during training sessions. No one officially called it imprisonment. That almost made it worse. Anakin noticed every change immediately, because Vader understood prisons better than most people understood freedom. And this felt exactly like the beginning of one. Obi-Wan found him alone near the Eastern Bridge platforms overlooking the cliffs. Rain crashed against the stone pathways while massive waterfalls thundered below the mountain temple. Anakin sat motionless near the edge, watching lightning split the sky apart. Obi-Wan stopped several feet away. "Still not close enough. You haven't slept." Anakin almost smiled. "I close my eyes and people disappear." The younger Jedi frowned carefully. "What does that mean?" Anakin looked toward the rain. "I remember worlds that no longer exist." Silence settled heavily between them, because Obi-Wan believed him now. That frightened him more every day. The younger Jedi slowly stepped closer. "Some masters think you're causing this." Anakin laughed quietly, not happily. The sound carried exhaustion older than the mountains around them. "I know." Obi-Wan hesitated, then finally asked the question haunting him since the ritual. "Are they wrong?" The words hurt more than they should have. Anakin stared out toward the storm silently for several seconds, then answered honestly, "I don't know anymore." That answer terrified Obi-Wan completely. 3 nights later, they tried to imprison him. Not Yoda, never Yoda, but several council masters moved secretly while the old Jedi master meditated deep inside the lower temple chambers. Anakin sensed them before they reached his room. Fear always moved loudly through the Force. He sat awake beside the rain-covered window while mechanical breathing echoed softly through the darkness around him again. Louder now, closer. The chamber door slid open. 4 Jedi entered carefully beneath dim lantern light, hands near their sabers, expressions tense. Anakin did not move. One master stepped forward slowly. "Anakin Skywalker, by order of the Council, you are being transferred to a secure meditation chamber until further decisions are made." Secure meditation chamber. A prison with polite language. Anakin looked toward the rain outside, and suddenly, something inside him cracked. Not rage, not hatred, loneliness. The same terrible isolation Palpatine once used to manipulate him years later. The Jedi were making the same mistake again. And deep inside himself, Vader felt it too. The breathing inside his head grew louder. Metal fingers, black armor, the seductive certainty of fear becoming power. One Jedi stepped closer cautiously. "Please come peacefully." Anakin slowly rose to his feet. The room darkened subtly. Rain hammered harder against the windows. "You're afraid of me," he whispered. No one answered, because denying it would have been a lie. The force around Anakin twisted violently. Candles extinguished instantly. The four Jedi ignited their lightsabers at the same time. Blue light flooded the chamber. And for one horrifying second, Anakin saw them differently. Not Jedi. Temple guards marching toward him beneath red emergency lights. The past collided with the present completely. Panic surged. The dark side answered instantly. Every object inside the chamber exploded outward. Stone shattered. Windows cracked. The Jedi staggered backward as invisible pressure slammed through the room like a shockwave. One master hit the far wall hard enough to collapse unconscious. Another lost his saber immediately. Anakin stopped breathing. No. He hadn't meant. The mechanical breathing roared inside his skull now, louder than ever, and suddenly another voice whispered through it. Smooth, familiar, patient, good. Anakin Palpatine. The sound froze his blood instantly. Impossible. Anakin stumbled backward violently while the Jedi regrouped around him in alarm. He looked toward the darkness behind them, and for one terrible moment, he saw Darth Sidious standing there smiling. Then the vision vanished. Anakin's body shook uncontrollably, because now he understood the truth. The timeline was not merely collapsing anymore. It was bleeding. Past, present, future, all crashing together. And somewhere inside the chaos, Darth Vader was trying to come home again. The temple alarms began screaming moments later. Not because of Anakin, because something worse had arrived. Every Jedi inside the mountain complex froze as a dark side shockwave tore through the force violently enough to shake the temple foundations themselves. The Sith had found them. Yoda appeared instantly at the chamber entrance. Rain and lightning flashed behind him while fear spread through the force like poison. The old master looked toward the mountains beyond the temple. Then his face darkened, because deep in the storm-covered valleys below, thousands of red lights suddenly ignited in the darkness. The Sith cults had come in person, and they were chanting one name, Vader. The chanting never stopped. Thousands of voices echoed through the storm-covered valleys beneath the Jedi temple, while red lights burned across the darkness like rivers of blood. Vader, Vader, Vader. Rain crashed against the mountain cliffs as Sith cultists climbed toward the temple through lightning and mud. Some carried ancient banners covered in crimson symbols. Others dragged ritual chains through the storm behind them. And somewhere deep inside the Force, something old was waking up. Anakin stood frozen near the shattered chamber windows while the chanting spread through his skull like poison. The breathing had become constant now. Mechanical, slow, living beside his heartbeat. He pressed trembling hands against his ears. It changed nothing, because the sound came from inside him. Obi-Wan ignited his lightsaber immediately beside the doorway, while temple alarms screamed through the corridors around them. They're surrounding the lower bridges. Several Jedi Masters rushed past outside, preparing defensive positions. Fear spread everywhere now. Not controlled fear. Panic. The same panic Anakin remembered from the final days of the Republic. The Jedi were collapsing exactly the same way again. Yoda entered the ruined chamber beneath flickering emergency lights. Rainwater rolled down his robes, while distant explosions shook the mountainside outside. The old master studied Anakin carefully, and what he saw terrified him. The child's face looked older somehow, exhausted beyond age itself. Like several versions of the same person were slowly tearing each other apart inside one body. "They came for me," Anakin whispered. No one denied it. Because the Sith cultists were not attacking the temple randomly. They were hunting Vader. The first bridge fell before sunrise. Sith fanatics charged across the mountain pathways through blaster fire and force barriers, while temple defenders struggled to hold formation beneath endless rain. Ancient red blades ignited across the darkness. Not true Sith lords. Not yet, but followers, believers, people desperate enough to worship destruction itself. Anakin watched from the upper temple balcony while fire spread across the lower courtyard below. And suddenly, another memory crashed into him. Mustafar. Flames rising across black stone structures. Clone Wars gunships burning in the sky. The same feeling. The same chaos. The same helplessness. No, he staggered backward sharply. The timeline was folding in on itself now. Past and present no longer stayed separate consistently. Yoda steadied him instantly. Focus. Anakin looked toward the battlefield below. They're trying to recreate him. The old master's expression darkened, because now he understood what the Sith truly wanted. Not merely Darth Vader. A new Sith empire born centuries early through the wound in the timeline itself. A ritual, ancient, terrible, and somewhere deep inside the Force, it had already begun. Moriband waited beneath eternal storms. Black sand rolled across dead valleys, while ancient Sith temples rose from the wasteland like broken teeth beneath red lightning. The dark side felt stronger here than anywhere else in the galaxy. Hungry, watching, Anakin stepped off the stolen transport slowly beside Yoda and Obi-Wan, while distant thunder shook the dead world around them. The air itself felt wrong. Every breath tasted like ash. Obi-Wan ignited his saber instinctively. This planet feels alive. No, Anakin whispered quietly. He stared toward the massive temple rising above the canyon cliffs ahead. It feels dead, and somehow that was worse. The Sith cultists had gathered there already. Thousands. Torches flickered across the massive stone stairways while dark chants echoed through the storm like funeral prayers. At the top of the temple steps stood the prophet. Blind white eyes, blood running down his face. Waiting. When he saw Anakin, he smiled. Lord Vader. The title poisoned the air instantly. Obi-Wan stiffened beside him. Yoda's cane tightened slightly. Anakin felt something inside himself twist painfully. Not temptation, recognition, because part of him still reacted to that name automatically. The prophet slowly raised trembling hands toward the storm above. The future has returned to us. Lightning exploded across the temple towers. The dark side surged violently, and deep beneath the temple floor, something mechanical began breathing. The battle erupted instantly. Jedi defenders clashed against Sith cultists across the massive stone stairways, while red lightning illuminated the storm around them in violent flashes. Obi-Wan fought near the lower entrance beside temple guards, his blue blade reflecting through heavy rain while enemies flooded toward them endlessly. Yoda moved differently, calmer, smaller, but impossibly precise. Every movement carried centuries of mastery. Yet even as he fought, the old master kept watching Anakin, because the child had stopped moving completely, frozen, listening. The breathing beneath the temple had become louder, calling him. Anakin slowly looked toward the massive black doorway at the top of the stairs, and the world around him faded. Rain disappeared. Battle sounds vanished. Only breathing remained. His breathing. Vader's breathing. The dark side wrapped around him like old armor returning home. You know this place. The voice echoed beside him smoothly. Palpatine. Anakin turned violently. The Sith Lord stood beneath the temple archway, smiling exactly as he remembered. Black robes, yellow eyes, patient cruelty. Impossible. You're dead. Palpatine's smile widened. No, the vision whispered softly. I am inevitable. The words shattered something inside Anakin immediately, because part of him still believed them. The ritual chamber waited beneath the temple. Ancient machinery covered the walls while massive Sith statues surrounded a black stone throne rising from the center platform. And connected to that throne, through wires, crystals, and dark side energy, was a child. A young boy trembling beneath metal restraints while Sith symbols burned across his skin in glowing red patterns. Anakin stopped breathing because the boy looked exactly like him. Not Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader reborn from memory itself. The Sith prophet entered slowly behind him. "The timeline gave us your suffering," the old man whispered. "Now we will give the galaxy your power." The mechanical breathing thundered through the chamber, louder than ever now. Anakin stared at the restrained child, and suddenly understood the horror completely. The ritual was using his memories. Every fear, every trauma, every moment of pain. The dark side was rebuilding Darth Vader through emotional scars embedded in the Force itself. The child on the throne slowly lifted his head. Yellow eyes opened. Anakin staggered backward, because he was staring at himself. Not metaphorically, literally. A younger Vader born from the collapsing timeline. "You cannot escape me," the child whispered mechanically. The chamber trembled violently. Obi-Wan and Yoda enter moments later through collapsing temple doors while battle sounds echoed faintly above them. Then Obi-Wan saw the child on the throne, and horror crossed his face immediately. Force, the younger Vader smiled slowly. "Hello, Master." Everything broke after that. The chamber exploded into chaos while Sith cultists flooded through the entrances behind them. Red blades ignited everywhere beneath stormlight pouring through cracks in the ceiling above. Obi-Wan fought desperately near the throne platform, while Yoda held back collapsing dark side energy spreading through the room like black fire. And at the center of it all, Anakin stood frozen before himself. The younger Vader slowly rose from the throne. Mechanical breathing echoed from inside a body that technically had no machinery yet. But the dark side remembered. "You still think you are different from me," Vader whispered. Anakin's hands shook violently. "You're not real. I am the truth." The words landed like a knife. Because deep inside himself, Anakin feared they were right. All this time he blamed Vader like another person. Another monster. Another life. But the truth was simpler. Vader was Anakin stripped down to fear and grief. Nothing more. Nothing less. The younger Vader stepped closer. "You still want power? No, you still fear loss." Anakin's silence answered for him. The chamber darkened violently. Rain exploded through the shattered ceiling above while the dark side churned around them both like a living storm. "You came back to save people," Vader whispered. But every choice made things worse. Images flashed around them instantly. Dead Jedi, burning futures, Luke vanishing, Padmé erased from history, the Jedi turning against him. Every attempt to save the timeline only accelerated its collapse. Anakin's breathing became uneven, because Vader understood exactly where to strike. "You cannot save the future as Anakin Skywalker," Vader whispered softly. The mechanical breathing deepened. "But you can control it as me." For one terrible second, Anakin almost reached for the throne. The temptation felt horrifyingly logical. Power. Control. No more helplessness. No more watching people die. The exact same lie that once destroyed him on Mustafar. Obi-Wan saw it immediately. Fear crossed his face. Not fear the Sith. Fear of Anakin choosing wrong again. Anakin. The name cut through the darkness sharply. Real. Human. Not Vader. Anakin looked toward Obi-Wan, then toward Yoda. The old master struggled against the collapsing ritual machinery, while dark side energy tore through the chamber around him violently. But even now, Yoda did not look at him with hatred, only sadness, only hope. And suddenly, Anakin understood. Vader was not some demon possessing him, not a curse, not another soul. Vader was pain left alone too long. Fear without love. Grief without forgiveness. Denying Vader only made him stronger. Because denial meant refusing responsibility. Slowly, Anakin stepped toward the younger Vader. Not with anger. Not with hatred. With acceptance. Tears mixed with rainwater across his face. You are part of me, he whispered. The chamber froze. Even the dark side hesitated. The younger Vader's expression shifted for the first time. Confusion. Anakin stepped closer. You were born from everything I refused to face. The mechanical breathing faltered. You were my fear. Another step. My guilt. The throne behind Vader began cracking apart. My pain. The younger Vader staggered backward slightly now. And for the first time, he looked afraid. Anakin's voice broke softly. But Luke was still right about us. Us. Not him. Us. The chamber exploded with light. The dark side screamed violently through the temple, while the throne shattered completely beneath waves of Force energy. The younger Vader reached toward him desperately, then dissolved into ash and light. Gone. Not destroyed. Accepted. The breathing stopped instantly. Silence filled the chamber. Real silence. For the first time since waking in the past, Anakin Skywalker could no longer hear Darth Vader inside his head. The temple began collapsing immediately afterward. Sith cultists fled through falling corridors, while ancient statues shattered around them beneath endless thunder. Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin escaped through the upper ruins just as the entire Sith shrine disappeared beneath fire and stone. Rain poured across Moraband's black deserts while dawn slowly broke beyond the storm clouds. The battle was over. The ritual destroyed. The future finally stabilizing. But Anakin felt something missing now. Something permanent. He looked toward the sunrise silently. And suddenly, he realized he could no longer remember Luke's face clearly. Panic hit him instantly. No. He tried harder. Blue eyes. Blonde hair. A smile. But the memories slipped apart like smoke between his fingers. Because the timeline where Luke Skywalker existed was gone now. Obi-Wan saw the grief hit him immediately. What happened? Anakin stared toward the sunrise while tears rolled silently down his face. I saved the future, he whispered weakly. The words sounded broken. Then came the truth. But I lost my son.